Hey guys, this is Rachel with the Playful Elephant, and today I thought I would give you some tips and tricks on how to create your physical scrapbook albums and folios using digital collections and digital paper and elements. I am actually in the process of creating a folio using Knitwit Collections, using Knitwit Collections paper, and the kit that I'm using is called On Knitwit Pond. So I thought I would kind of use this video with that. So here is the album on your screen, and below is a link to see the tutorial and walkthrough of that album. So since I'm in the middle of creating that one, I thought I would use that to record this video. So I have Cricut Design Space open, and this is not a tutorial on how to use Cricut Design Space, so I am assuming that you already are familiar with that software. And I don't use any other machines or software, so unfortunately I can't make a tutorial with anything else. This is exclusively what I use when I scrapbook with digital collections. So, okay, so right now I'm building a folio, and I'm going to design the cover. It's an 8 1/4 by 6.5 cover. Okay, so just, whatever the size cover of your scrapbook album is, we're gonna, just pretend you're gonna design the cover of your album. So I'm gonna go ahead and view my uploads. I've went ahead and already pulled in everything from the collection that I'm planning on using, at least for the cover. I will upload more later. So I'm gonna bring in this 12 by 12 scrapbook paper, this one and this one, and add them to my canvas. Okay, so I'm gonna hide that one for a second and hide this one for a second. Okay, so now so this is gonna be on my cover, okay? In order to get that to the size that I want, I am not simply going to resize this, because what will happen if I want to resize this is, that's going to happen. You definitely don't want to do that. So let me hit back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open my images. I'm going to open my shapes. And I'm going to grab a square. Okay, and I'm going to resize the square to whatever size that I want this scrapbook paper on my cover. So my cover is 8 1/4 by 6.5. So I'm going to want this to be 8 by 6 1/4. Okay, so let's take this. My width will be 6 1/4, and my height will be 8. Okay, so there we go. So this is the size that I need my mat to be for the cover of my album or my folio. Okay, so if I were to take this and place it on top of my scrapbook paper, you can see that my scrapbook paper is going to be pretty large. So I want to get more of the pattern in there. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to get more of the pattern within this square. So I'm just going to overlap the two, select them both, and click slice. Now I can delete this square, and I can delete the piece from the scrapbook paper that is left over. And now I have a perfectly sized mat for the cover of my album, and it measures 8 inches tall by 6 1/4 inches wide. Okay, so now I'm going to bring these two pieces back in. I'm going to make them visible. Okay, actually I'll keep this one hidden for a second. Okay, so for this one, let me get it smaller. Let me bring it down. And I want this one to go in the background, so I'm going to hit send to back. Okay, so now this one is also going to go on top. And I want a relatively large border. And this one I can do this because there's no defining pattern that's going to get all wonky. So I don't need to use a shape to slice it. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and make that, just eyeball it, whatever you think looks good. So this piece is about 6 1/4 wide. So let's go 1/2 inch smaller, which would be 5 3/4. Okay, and if my mat is 8 inches tall, then let's make this 7 1/2 tall. So I'm just putting in my measurements here. Okay, then I can highlight both, and I can go align and center. There we go. And now I'm going to bring the blue one back in. Okay, let me make that smaller. And again, I don't really need to slice that one. It doesn't have any kind of a pattern that'll get wonky, so I can just do it this way. And I want this to sit inside that one with a tiny little border. I want the brown to be a little itty bitty border. Okay, so you can eyeball it or you can type in your measurements, whichever you prefer. Let's see, I'm just kind of moving it around, seeing if I can get it even on all 4 sides. Let me bring it down a little. There, I'm happy with that. So let me hide my pattern paper by clicking the eyeball. And I'm just taking a look. I love the way that looks. Okay, so I'm going to want to print this as one piece of paper. So I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to hit flatten. Okay, you're not going to do merge. You don't have to do attach either. You're flattening them. So now this is going to print as one continuous design. Okay, let me bring my mat back in. Oops. Grab those both pieces and hit align and center. Okay, so there we go. And now that I have them sized correctly, I don't ever want to resize them. I'm using my mouse and my control key to zoom in and zoom out. Okay, I'm not actually resizing these bigger or smaller here. Okay, so there we go. And now what I want to do is I want to actually decorate the cover. So I'm going to go back into my uploaded images, and I'm going to pull in everything that I want to use. Okay, so I am going to be using this flower, the bee, the butterfly, the fish coming out of the water, this fish by itself, the frog coming out of the water, the frog on the tree branch, all 3 mushrooms. I'm going to use this pond, the snail, the turtle, the splash, and I believe that's it. So I'm going to add all those to the canvas. Okay, and when they come in, they're all selected together. So before I deselect those, I'm gonna just resize them real quickly, all at the same time. Makes it so much easier. Okay, perfect. So now I can deselect by clicking outside. Okay, perfect. So let me just kind of get these all spread around. All right, so from this point on, you're just kind of placing them wherever you think they look good. Okay, I know I definitely want my frog on the branch here. I want him to go all the way to the edge of the back matting. Okay, and I want him coming out pretty far across the center of the page. Perfect. And he is going to print, then cut all by himself. I don't want him attached to anything. You could attach him to the background, but I don't want my background to be one single print. I want all the elements to come out separate. I can pop them up that way if I choose to. Okay, I'm going to take my 3 mushrooms. Let me just move them here. Oops. My Cricut Design Space does this funky thing sometimes. Okay. So I am just going to Oh, there we go. I'm just going to move these, you know, just move them around in a way that I think looks good. Without deleting them, hopefully. Okay, make that one a little bigger. So, you know, just play with your elements and see what you think. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these for the moment. I don't want to flatten them yet. So there's still 3 individual layers, but I have them attached so I can move them all at the same time. So I'm going to put those there for now. I know I want my pond to go at the bottom. So let me stick that there. So these are too big, I think. All right, so what I'll do is I'll resize those. So actually, I'm going to make this bigger. And let me see here. So yeah, you're just kind of playing around with it. I think they're too wide because I obviously don't want them going off the edge of my page, but I also don't want them covering up half of the pond. So let me detach those 3. And I'll make this one smaller. Let's try that. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I like that. I like that a lot. And what I don't want is I don't want, as you can see, the little reeds on the right side of the pond are sticking up past my mushrooms. I don't really want that. So I'm going to take this down here, my pond. I'm just going to grab a random shape. And I will cover up that part of the reed that I don't want sticking out. I'm sorry, let me silence my phone. And then once that's covering up the reed or the part that I want to get rid of, I'll highlight both pieces and I will hit slice. Okay, so it made a cutout of whatever it covered. So that's trash, and that is trash. There we go. So now I can bring that back up. Okay, let me bring my mushrooms back up. Make sure they're at the front. Great, that is what that is going to look like. Okay, my flower is going to go here, but let me flip it horizontally. There we go. Oh, and perfect. It's already where I want it. It's on top of the cover, but it's behind the mushrooms. Let me just reset. Oops, back. And you have to be careful because sometimes when you're trying to select a layer, it won't let you because it's another layer is in the way. So if you need to, just find that layer over here. There it is, my sunflower, and then move it that way. Nope, see, it still did it. Okay. All right, I like that. Okay. I'm going to take my little froggy sticking out of the water. Oops, let's bring him to the front. Make him smaller. He looks good right there. There's my fish coming out of the water. Bring him to the front. I like that. He looks good there. I'm going to take this little guy, rotate him like he's jumping out of the water, make him smaller. Oops. See what I mean? I haven't figured out exactly how to do this, apparently. Maybe I can hide this one. There we go. All right, I'll bring this one back in. No, he's too high up. Okay, And then these little splashes, these little splashes. Perfect. Okay. And I'm going to take my little turtle and my snail. Let's place him here. Oops, he needs to go forward, so bring him to the front. I'm going to have him go all the way down to the very bottom of the outside mat. I think he needs to be bigger. And then I'll take him and let's turn him around. First of all, bring him to the front. And then let's turn him so he's facing the opposite direction that the snail is facing. So flip horizontal. We're going to put him right here. Make him a little smaller maybe. Okay. And what do I have left? Let's take this little butterfly. Maybe put her there. And our little bee. Maybe put him there. Okay. There we go. So this is what the cover of my album is going to look like. So now these 3 mushrooms, again, I want them to be printed as one cohesive piece. Right now they're attached together, but they're still going to print separate, which would not be good because they're overlapping each other. So I'm going to hit flatten. So now it is one cohesive image. It's only going to cut all along the outside edges. Okay? So that one's good and it's sized exactly how I liked it, so I do not want to resize it. The sunflower is going to, well, the pond is going to cut exactly how it is. This guy's going to cut exactly how he is. Everything else is fine. The only other piece that we wanted to combine was this, and we already did that. As you can see, it's highlighted in our layers and it is flattened. Okay, so we are actually ready to go. And one more tip I'm going to give you. Let's just go ahead and I'm going to save it very quickly because my Cricut machine sometimes, or I should say my computer, sometimes decides that it is not having it and it'll hard crash and then I've lost all my work. So save often. On Nitwit Pond cover. Okay, save. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my 2 large mats just to get them out of the way. Actually, no, wait. First, I'm going to show you what happens if I just hit make it. Okay? So this, of course, is on its own piece of paper because it's giant. This is on its own piece of paper. But then it gives me 2 more papers, which is such a waste of space. So I never rely on Cricut, the Cricut software, to organize my items because I'm wasting an entire piece of paper of my nice cardstock. So let me hide this large mat. Let me hide this one, get them out of the way, and then we are going to get everything else on one sheet of paper. So in order to do that, bring in a shape, bring in a square, and you are going to resize this to 6 3/4 by 9 1/4. Okay, so this is the max size that you can print. Do the print then cut feature. This is the max size, 6 3/4 by 9 1/4. So now that you have that there, let's make sure it's sent to the back. And you can go ahead and take all of your elements and arrange them within that square. Okay. And actually, you know what we could do? These, no, it doesn't matter. Never mind. Okay. Okay, so now you have all of the other elements on one piece of paper. You're not wasting a sheet of your cardstock. Okay, so now that you have all those together, it's not going to cut like this unless you attach them. So we can go ahead and get rid of this, highlight all of those elements, and you only want to attach. You don't want them to be flattened. You just want to attach them. Okay, so now when I hit make it, but let me bring back my mats, my cover mats. Now when I hit make it, boom, look at that. They are exactly how you position them on one sheet of paper. You're not wasting cardstock. And then this is the next one, and then this is the next one. All right, so all you're going to do now is you're going to hit, if obviously you know how to proceed, if you're watching this video, you're going to hit continue, and you're going to print them, and then your Cricut machine is going to cut them, and I will show you how to arrange them all. Okay, so here's another something that you can do if you want to decorate your photo mats. I don't do it nearly enough. I love to decorate my photo mats, but usually the problem is, well, how do I get them to stick down without getting in the way of where we're going to put the picture? So here's a little something you can do. Okay, so I went ahead and just brought in a shape. Okay, I brought in a square and I colored it to a craft cardstock. And here is the color code for that. Wait a minute, that's not the same one I have written down. Let me see which one is right. Oh, okay, I think, interesting. Well, I think it's this one. Okay, so anyways. All right, so I brought in a square, this one right here, and I made it the exact same size as the photo flaps in my album. So I have quite a few. I think in the current album I'm working on, I have, I don't know, 10 maybe, 6¼ So the actual cardstock itself, my craft colored cardstock, is 6¼ by 4¼ and then my photo mats, which I'll cut from white cardstock, are 6⅛ of an inch by 4⅛ of an inch. So I just went ahead and brought in 2 squares to represent those two. Okay, and I'm going to align and center. So now I can pretend that this is my actual physical photo flap and photo mat that I'll be working with, and having these here makes it easy to size my decorations perfectly. So let's see, I'm gonna show you, let's bring in these two. Okay, so what I'm gonna show you is, for example, let's say that I want this to sit in the corner of my photo album. There is not an easy way to adhere it. You have just a little sliver over here to apply glue, and you have a little sliver of cardstock down here to apply glue. So what you can do, put your element where you want it, resize it however you'd like it. I don't want it covering up too much of the photo, but I also don't want it too tiny. I think that's a good size. I actually quite like that. And I want it to hang off of the edges of my card. I'm sorry, the edges of my flap just a little bit. So that's pretty much exactly what I want it to look like. Okay. So what you're going to do next, let's get that out of the way. Take your actual cardstock flap, or the piece that's representing it. You're going to duplicate it, okay? And just move that out of the way for now. It's just there so that you have an extra one, because we're getting ready to damage this one. We're going to go ahead and select both of these, and we're going to hit slice. Basically what that's going to do is it's going to remove these extra pieces there from your element. Okay, let's delete it. Unfortunately, it also messed up our cardstock flap, but what did we do? We already made an extra. Okay, so we're good. Let's move that to the back. Okay, let's get these two lined up again. Align, center. Okay, so now this thing is perfectly sized and perfectly shaped to print out, to cut, and then to adhere straight onto our photo flap. Or, I'm sorry, our photo. So what we're going to do to adhere it is I'm going to bring in 2 more shapes. Let's do this one. Okay. I'm just going to use Control and then my mouse wheel to zoom in here a little bit. Okay. Oops. All right, so let's make this a bit skinnier. All right, so basically what I'm doing is I'm creating I'm going to duplicate this. I'm creating 2 little tabs, which we are going to use to adhere to the back side of our photo mat. Okay, so you want to make sure there's at least 1/2 of an inch hanging off. So I'm going to line this element up. I hope you can understand what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm doing a very good job explaining. So I'm going to line this element up with any straight line, and then I'm going to line the bottom edge up with any straight line. So now I can take this, let's move it to the back, and I can make sure I have 1/2 an inch sticking out. Okay, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so from here to here I can use my grid lines to see that I have at least 1/2 an inch. I'm going to move this one to the back, and I can use my grid lines here to see that I have at least 1/2 inch, and I've gone a little bit more than 1/2 inch. Okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it into craft color, which, if I didn't say it earlier, is C as in cat, 1A as in apple, 178. Okay, and that's just going to make it a little bit considerably easier to blend into the cardstock that I'm using. If your album uses black cardstock, you would just make them black. If your album uses white cardstock, you would make them white. Okay, so now I can take all 3 of these, and I'm going to actually, you know what? Let's duplicate that one. Let's duplicate that one. Move them off to the side. Okay, so now I can go ahead and flatten. I want those 3 to actually be one cohesive image. I want it to cut all around the entire edge. Okay, it's not just attached, it's flattened. Okay, so then what's going to happen when we print and cut this, when we have this physical piece in our hands, we will stick it onto our photo mat just like this, and we will take this flap, and we will take this flap, we will fold it back behind our cardstock, and we'll glue it down. Okay? And then we'll do one more. We'll do this one. And I'm just going to kind of use my first one as a guide on how big to make this one. That looks good. But this one I'm going to have on the right side. This is going to go on another photo flap. It's going to be on the right. So I'd say right about there looks good. Let me move this one out of the way since we're done with it. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, let's move our mat out of the way. Let's duplicate this one because we're getting ready to destroy it. Now we're going to highlight these 2 and we're going to hit slice. So here's what we cut away right there. We can delete it. This is the piece that we're going to be using. Okay, and then this one is trash and this one is trash. So now let's bring in our duplicate piece. Put these 2 back in position by aligning and centering. Okay, and now here is our element that is perfectly sized and exactly how we want it to sit on our photo mat. Okay, just like that. And since we had already copied these 2, they are done. I'm going to zoom in again, and actually let me move this piece so the bottom edge is on a 1-inch line and the right edge is on a 1-inch line. And then I'll make sure I have at least a 1/2 inch sticking out there and at least a 1/2 inch sticking out there. I'm sorry, my dog is making a lot of noise. Cricket, what are you doing, silly? Okay, and then we are going to highlight all 3 and we are actually going to flatten so it prints and then cuts as one cohesive element. Let me zoom back out. And there we go. So if you were to picture this piece, let's just say we were working with this photo flap right here. We have a white mat on the front side of our cardstock, and then if you were to flip this over, you've got a white mat on the back. You could go ahead and adhere this one onto your actual cardstock. You would flip these 2 around to the back and secure them. And on the opposite side of this piece, actually, you know what? I'll just show it to you for real. We'll print these out and we'll show it. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and print then cut these 2. We do not need these. This is just, those 2 pieces were just representing our physical paper. But I'm going to go ahead and print and cut these, and I'm going to show you exactly how to adhere them. Okay, so I have print and cut my 2 little elements, and I have a couple different photo mats here. You might have one that sits landscape with a flap, like a waterfall. You may have one. You might have one that sits landscape with a flap on the left. Doesn't matter. What? If you just have a standalone photo mat, it's the exact same as if it was a flap, okay? So all you're doing, let's just use the one that flips up like a waterfall, okay? So you've got
your waterfall flap attached, okay? All you're doing is you're taking this, you're lining up the edge of your actual element. Phineas, what are you making so much noise for? You're lining up your two edges, okay? The edge of this element and the edge of the bottom of the element. I'm just eyeballing it, okay? What I don't want is I don't want the white part of my cardstock, of the element, I should say, to stick out past the back side. The only thing that should stick out on the back are these things, okay? So once I have that lined up perfectly, just fold it over, okay? And then you just apply glue to the back, okay? You could apply glue by keeping it in position without moving it and apply it that way. Okay, just like that. And there you go. So then when you're ready, you will just slide your mat in and adhere it. Or I should say, apply your adhesive to the back of your mat, slide it in, and you're done. That's simple. Now, if you wanted one on the other side of this, so imagine, again, this is adhered down, so you're gonna flip it up. This one won't work. So when you create this one within Cricut, you need to create it so that it's situated in the upper right-hand corner, okay? So then for this one, let's pretend we're using one like this, okay? So it attaches to your book like that. Same exact thing. You just line up the edges of the element with the edges of your cardstock, okay? Like I said, just make sure the only thing sticking out on the other side are the flaps. Fold them over. And then if you wanted to, you don't have to hold it in place. You can remove it, apply your glue, and just line it up again, okay? Have a dog here visiting, and that dog and my dog are being so loud. Okay, and again, you just apply adhesive to the back of your photo mat, slide it in, and adhere it down, okay? So the only thing, again, you always want to keep in mind when you're designing these is, you know, have your photo album, your folio with you in front of your computer, and just plan out what corner it's going to go on, you know, as you flip it over, what corners are still available, and that's all you're doing. And of course, if you have a standalone photo mat, any corner would work. You could have it on one side, you could have it on both, it's up to you. And so then with these that we've already finished, when this does flip over in your book, okay, when it does flip over, these are really well hidden because it's craft colored, but they're gonna get hidden even more because of course you're gonna take another photo mat and you're gonna adhere it right there. So there you go. That's how I do that.
Okay, so what I'm going to show you now is how I make my my photo windows, like a photo frame, using clear crafter's plastic. Okay. So step one is to grab whatever photo you're using or figure out what size picture you're using. I'm going to pretend I'm using a 4x6 photo, and this is going to represent my physical picture. Okay. Let's bring in a shape. I should say a square. And this is going to represent the actual cardstock window, photo frame, okay? Now, I always make my photo frames 1/4 of an inch larger than my actual picture. So if my picture is 4x6, then I'm going to want my cardstock frame to be 4 1/4. Oops. Turn off the lock so that you can size each dimension separately. By 6 1/4, okay? So my photo is 4x6, my frame is 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. So basically your photo will be perfectly sized within your frame, okay? And of course, if you have a landscape photo, you can work with this in this position. Okay, same thing, you're just kind of rotating it. All right. Okay, so the next step is you want to create your center cutout because this is a window frame. So let's bring in another shape, and I'm gonna make that red just so that there's some contrast, okay? And I like my borders on my photo windows to be about 5/8 of an inch. You could make yours a 1/2 an inch, smaller, larger, whatever you like. So I want 5/8 of an inch here, 5/8 of an inch here, 5/8 of an inch here, and 5/8 of an inch here, okay? So my actual frame itself is 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, okay? So if we have 5/8 of an inch here and here, 5/8 plus 5/8 is 1 1/4. So I need to take the width of this and subtract 1 1/4. So 4 1/4 minus 1 1/4 is 3. So this is going to become 3. Same thing. I want 5/8 of an inch here and here, so those two together equal 1 1/4. And if my length is 6 1/4, subtract out 1 1/4, we get 5. So now the length of this will become 5. There we go. So if I take these two and center them, we have a perfect 5/8 of an inch border all the way around. Okay? Okay. So before we continue with our window frame, we need to make our decorative cardstock border, the piece that we're going to actually adhere to our window frame, the decorative piece. We just need to make that at this point before we continue. So let's go ahead and duplicate these two. Oops. Duplicate these two, okay, because we are going to continue with making our actual cardstock window frame in a moment. So let's save this, preserve it. I'm going to hide those, okay? And then we'll go ahead and use this set, this duplicate set, to make our cardstock border that we are going to print, cut, and glue to our frame. So for right now, we can go ahead and slice these because this is our frame, okay? So when we're all said and done, we're going to have something that looks like this. So we need a decorative cardstock to adhere to here, okay? Now I like really little borders. Let's bring in a shape. Let's make this blue. I like very small borders, okay? I like my borders to be just 1/8 of an inch smaller. 1/8 of an inch. So if this measures 4 1/4 by 6 1/4, I have to subtract 1/8 from here and 1/8 from here, which is 4 1/8 by 6 1/8. So that's what I'm going to do with this piece. So just imagine we had a center cut out of this. Look at that beautiful little border, okay? So now we actually need to cut out the center, and the actual decorative piece is going to be 1/2 of an inch. So all I have to do with this is cut out a square so I have 1/2 of an inch left over. And in order to do that, I simply need to make, okay, so we're going to pretend that we have 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, which means I need to take 1 inch away from both the width and the length. Okay? So if this is 4 1/8 by 6 1/8, this needs to be 3 1/8 by 5 1/8. So now I can take these two, make sure they're perfectly centered, and then I can hit slice. Okay? So let's delete that and this. And now we have a perfectly sized, beautiful piece that we will cut out of whatever decorative cardstock paper we want to be our decorative border. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep this blue just so I remember, oh, that's my decorative cardstock piece that's going to cover the border. And I'm going to hide that, okay? and this is done. We're deleting this. Okay, so now all we want to do is we want to go back to this piece and pick up where we left off. So we are going to continue making our, we're not quite done with our actual window frame. We still need to cut out the center, and we need to add flaps for adhering everything. So we'll continue with that. So we are eventually going to slice that, but not yet, because what we want to do now is we want to add our 1/2 inch flaps to our actual cardstock, because that's going to allow us to score, fold those flaps, and they'll hold in our crafter's plastic and our design paper, and create a one-piece mechanism that will do the entire window. We won't have multiple pieces to cut and resize and all that fun stuff. So, okay, so let's add our flaps. So our picture, I am going to have my picture slide in from the top. Okay, so it's going to slide in just like that. All right, so I do not need a 1/2 inch flap here at the top, but I need one on the right, I need one on the left, and I need one on the bottom. So if I need one on the right and one on the left, basically I have to add 1 inch to our width. So let's take this, make sure the lock is off, and turn this into 5 1/4. Okay, and now let's center this. It's really important that after we add our 1/2 inch flaps to the side, we center these two pieces, because we are only adding 1/2 inch flap to the bottom, so we're not going to be able to center it afterwards. So now that we have our cutout, our center window perfectly centered, let's go ahead and add 1/2 inch flap here. So what will that do? That will make our length 1/2 inch bigger. So 6 1/4 plus a 1/2 inch is 6 3/4. Boom, it added a 1/2 inch to the bottom. So this is still perfectly centered. So now we can take both of these pieces, we can do slice, and there we go. I deleted those two. Okay, so just imagine this. Imagine you've already cut this from your cardstock, whatever cardstock you're using. I'm not using Cricut to actually score my paper. I'm going to score it after I cut it. But just imagine you cut this piece and then you put it in your scoreboard and you score a 1/2 inch line here. And then you score a 1/2 inch line here. And then you score a 1/2 inch line here. Of course, I could just cut this and show you, which I will. So imagine after you cut this piece, and this is not a print and cut, of course, it's just a basic cut because you're cutting this from your solid cardstock that you're using to build your album. You'll have your machine cut it, and then you'll have this piece. You'll put it in your scoreboard, your score 1 inch, 1/2 an inch here, 1/2 an inch here, 1/2 an inch here. You'll cut out your little corners, you'll fold, you'll burnish. And then your photo will slide right in behind there, just like that. Of course, you'll put your crafter's plastic in and everything. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, I'm going to hide this piece. Let me get rid of my score lines. Okay, and then you are ready to hit make, and it will cut this from your cardstock. And I'll show you what to do next.
Okay, so here's the piece that we cut. Okay, so of course on 3 sides we've got a lot more space. Those are the 3 sides that we added the 1/2 an inch to create flaps. Okay, so 1/2 an inch here, 1/2 an inch here, and 1/2 inch here. Okay, so then we just want to cut out those little squares that were created when our score lines intersected. And then we can go ahead and fold on our score lines. And your 4x6 picture, when it's all said and done, will slide in through the top, okay? And of course, if you wanted to make it so a picture slides in from the side, when you're in Cricut Design Space, you'll add a 1/2 inch flap here, and then only on one side. And you will leave the other side that size, okay? So, you know, you have the basic techniques, so just tailor them to anything. Tailor them to a 5x7 picture, to a 3.5 by 5 inch picture. Okay,